Good morning, everyone, or maybe it's afternoon for you. It is Tuesday morning for me, and I thought I would get this posted early so that you could use it with your interactions. We're going to be looking at the models of co-teaching, and I'm going to try to give you some practical examples to go along with some of the principles and pros and cons that you saw in your in the articles. The models that we'll be talking about are one teach, one support or assist, one teach, one observe or gather data, parallel teaching, team teaching, alternative teaching, and station teaching. There is an organizer that looks something like this that's posted in the module for you to use or not use depending on what kind of a learner you are. You can print it off and write in it. You can type right into it if you want to. Just something to help you keep track as we go. So I'll give you a second to pause and download that if you want to. Okay, so we're going to start with the model that you have seen the most, one teaching, one supporting. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because I think you're familiar with it. The benefit is that you don't have to plan. Like, you can just walk in and do it. It's most effective if you do have a conversation. The downfall is it can turn into one teach, one police, and the person who is circulating loses credibility. So if you have a trained special educator in your classroom who has a master's in special education and you're asking them to just walk around, you can imagine how you would feel if that were you. So if we can, if you've got somebody that you regularly team with, some of these other models might be better. And this one is probably the next step that could really help, that wouldn't take a ton of planning. And that is, it looks like one teach, one assist, but they're actually observing or collecting data and analyzing data. If not used correctly, it can turn into one teach, one police, but it doesn't have to. The drifting teacher, if their observations and assessments are used, then they don't lose credibility. So how do we do that? And here's your little visual for that. One teach, one gather data. Got a couple of options, Padlet or Go Formative. So you stop, you pause, you have students do an electronic assessment, and then the teacher can check those responses while the other one continues. And then you pause while students are practicing and look at what your data is and say, maybe we need to pull this group because they have a misconception, or this group because they have a question that's more like down the road and we'd like to give them some enrichment. And you can then move to the alternative teaching where you pull a small group. I'm going to show you some other. So this is Go Formative. You can see stuff right there. And it gives you a chance to where to put feedback. You've seen this same thing in Padlet, where I can write feedback right on there. In Go Formative, you actually have a chance, and I don't think I have a picture of this. Oh, I do. Yay. Where students can pull in a graph and do some, as you see that Trisha did down here. This is a group of teachers that I worked with. You can draw if you want to. They can write out equations. So Go Formative is better than Padlet in that regard. However, in Padlet, students can take a picture of their work and post that on the Padlet, upload that as a file. So those are two electronic ways for you to gather data and to have one of the teachers looking at the data, seeing what needs to happen and doing that. Doesn't have to be electronic. This is a teacher that I worked with out in Albemarle County at Sutherland Middle School. She did this on her iPad. She emailed this to me and showed me what she did. And this was, her going very quickly through and saying these were, what needed some help and what needed, where the errors were, and who she needed to pull in a small group. And so that is, this is after the Red Stars was a check that it was given after like a quiz. So they were supposed to be able to do this. On the other hand, this one was a new concept that was introduced. And so she, took a picture and then who she wanted to meet with and who she didn't feel like she needed to, or two different groups that she would pull but do different things with them. That's what I think they did in this classroom, is that they pulled the students with the red stars and had one conversation with them, and then pulled the students with the green checks and had another conversation with them. And I don't think they necessarily did it all at the same time. So that's just another way you can do it. This is something that I have used rather frequently, and these are exit tickets, but they could be at any point in the lesson. And you stop, you pause, you have them post it, and this means I'm pretty sure my answer is wrong. This means I'm not gonna. I wouldn't base my life on it. I think it's right, but I'm not 100% sure. And I'm 100% sure this is my answer. So the expectation when I use this with my students was that if you do this, I'm going to be pulling small groups at some point. And I knew that when I had somebody down here who was completely wrong, it was a different conversation than it was up here. So I could say, why are you so certain that you are correct? And then in their explanation, sometimes they caught themselves, which was cool. But if you've got two teachers in the room, that works even more seamlessly, that they can pull the students or two different, you and the co-teacher can both pull small groups of students and have different conversations. So that's making the data available, visible. Going to ask you to pause and just make notes to yourself. Which data monitoring model do you prefer? What might you use in your classroom? And those slides are will be in the module as well. All right, next model, parallel teaching. This classroom they have two groups opposite sides of the room, divided into mixed readiness. It's basically just trying to take down the teacher-student ratio. Both teachers really need to have the same expertise in order to be able to do this. All of these models that we're talking about, we worked with some teachers in Albemarle County, science teachers, middle and high school science teachers on co-teaching. Dr. Webb and I did. And so we did the one teaching, one gathering data, and we used Go Formative and did exactly what I described to you. But actually, Dr. Webb was looking at the Go Formative results, and then she took over teaching because there was a common misconception. So then I finished, she said, okay, I'm looking at your formative assessment results, and she did a mini lesson. So that's another way you can do that, is just give the teacher who was gathering the data a chance to respond to it. In parallel teaching, we did the same lesson, but we did it on two different sides of the room. This was something that we had to coordinate because it gets loud. And so we had the distracting. When we were doing this, we did the lesson kind of in reverse. I started talking. She had them start by watching a video with earbuds. And then she used the earbuds, the video as a launch. And then I had the video afterwards. So we kind of did the same lesson, but in different order, so that when my students had earbuds on, hers did not, and vice versa. And that was really the only way we could make that work, because it's hard in a noisy classroom. Okay, station teaching. This one is used a lot. The person who's posted Ben has already posted his interactions, and he said that he used this one. There are so many different ways to use stations, and I know that what you read talked about the pros and cons, but it really does take advantage of the fact that there are two experienced people in the room. So for station rotations, and you can click this to see more, there are three components if you would like to do station teaching, but we always have to think about how do we set these up for success, because just because we have stations doesn't mean it's going to go well. What are my options for each station, and how do I infuse accountability? The answer to this is just stuff like I showed you from the Post-its and stuff. Well, of course, nothing's going to do any good. Okay, so this is one way to use stations, and I think this is what Ben described. So you've got both teachers are at a separate table. And then when it's time to switch, they just swap tables. So the students who need some extra attention are working with both teachers. They don't do any independent work. These two stations are doing something, and these two stations are doing something. And so when you swap, they swap and they swap. So you really have you're making up a total of 1, 2, 3, 4 activities, and then you're just working with small groups. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is there's no rotation. You just have students at these groups, and you have these longer activities. And so they switch, but they don't. That just calls more attention to the fact that that some students are working with the teacher and the others are not. So if you can have everybody switch and they're doing independent work, then that would, oh, I lied. I forgot. Okay, this was done in a math classroom. Trish was here. The special ed teacher was here. When they switched, they actually switched. So they were doing the same thing. That's what the arrows are. They were doing the same thing and they were doing the same thing. They just were in smaller groups because you don't want a group of 10. Like a group of 10 is bad. So they were both doing some things like textbook, the things in the boxes in the textbook that you never have a chance to get to because you're like, that's nice, too bad I don't have time to get. They were working on that. They were working on equivalency cards. So when they switched, they flip-flopped. She called it switch flop. They flip-flopped. And then they flip-flopped. So there were only 2 activities that the teacher had to make. The instructions for doing the problems, the extra credit in the book, and the equivalency card activity that was very hands-on. So that's what they did when they switched. Sorry, I messed that up. You can have students rotate to each station. If that's the case, when students get to you or your co-teacher, you should have something specialized for them. We've got students in like readiness groups here. When this green comes over here, they'll do something different probably than red did because they need something different. So that's just a way to differentiate instruction in a seamless way. Another way that you can do it is just have one teacher-led station and have the other teacher floating for the other 2 things. This is a typical model of stations used especially in project-based learning. So you can have larger groups. This group is all working on something on their computer, online instruction. This is a small group with the teacher. And then these are like collaborative activities and like the equivalency cards, and you make 2 smaller groups. The way that might look in a classroom is, this is like, but pretend this is like, you're not going to, you might have 90 minutes with it. If it was a 90-minute classroom, group 1 starts off at the computers, group 2 does their independent work or collaborative work, and group 1, the third rotation, they're with the teacher. Group 2 starts with the teacher, moves to online, and then collaborative. Group 3 starts in collaborative, moves to the teacher, and finishes with online. So if you want to know more about that blog is there as well. If you want to work a 4th station in there, we've got to make the number smaller. We still have the online. We still have the small group with the teacher. We still have the collaborative, but this is more of a large group, like brainstorming time. And you would want to have that second teacher here because it's a larger group and you would need to control noise. And so that's the benefit of having a co-teacher here. One's leading a small group. The other one is kind of facilitating and managing this larger group, which can get much louder than something that's individual or something that is small group. I just wanted to show you this one. This is an example of, here's the brainstorming group, here's the online group, here's the teacher-led group, and here they actually had some more individual work here. They've got earbuds on. The way these students knew where to go is they came in, and where their regular seat was, they had their sticky note, and then they kind of had to bring that with them when they rotated. So that's how and more examples of that from Caitlin Tucker. I've learned a lot from her. And then here's just another example of something you can do, but I want to draw your attention to the questions in the middle here. How much things to think about before you do stations is how much time are you going to spend per station? What do you want students to accomplish, and make sure that they produce something, whether that's something you can check online or something tangible in that small group or large group setting. What materials are needed at each station? What's your cue to move students to the next station? Is it music? Is it the light switch? And then what do you expect to be produced? Not just the objective, but what will be produced. And I really firmly believe that something needs to be produced or students will just hang out, unless you want them to just read. That's always an option. All right. So that is station teaching. I want you to pause and make some notes to yourself about which kind of station seem like they might be the most useful for you in your classroom. Okay, welcome back from thinking about stations. We're going to finish up with two other models, and I'm going to give you some due dates. Team teaching. This is really kind of one demonstrates while the other one role plays. This is best used in science. When Angela and I did this with the science teachers, we did the extracting DNA from a strawberry. And so, oops, no map for that. So she talked me through the lab and I did it. I had my goggles on and my, like whatever. And I, Christina Dubé, extracted DNA from a strawberry. Thank you very much. Under Dr. Webb's excellent guidance. But students were able to hear the instructions, see them up on the screen, but then also see what it would look like. And then we sent them to different stations and they did their own DNA extraction. So it really was like we needed both of us and it felt equally respectful. Interactive teaching is something like that, but you ping pong back and forth. And so it could be like one teacher speaks and the other teacher models, and then you flip roles and and you do it the other way around. So if you have one teacher explaining something and another teacher doing a diagram on the whiteboard, then you would pause and ask questions. And then the next segment of the lesson, it would be reversed. The teacher who was diagramming is now explaining, and the teacher who's explaining is now diagramming. So that's a little bit different. I don't know that this one was in your readings. Team teaching and interactive teaching are really very similar. No special setup is needed. Both teachers are on at some point. It's just that in alternative, they swap roles, whereas in team teaching, they maintain the same role. And finally, my favorite, which can be worked in with all of the rest of them, alternative teaching. This one has a desk or a place to pull a small group. I used to call them group huddles. The teacher varies the small group so as not to stigmatize one learning group. If you're only pulling the students that need help, you're stigmatizing them. So it is good if students are absent. That's okay. Hey, these people were absent. Come on back. And if you want another review, come on back. You can do that too. Both teachers need to take turns being at that small table so as to, again, not stigmatize students. This is a really good place, a good opportunity for students who, like, this is like, mixed needs. So we might have some students who were absent and some students that just want to have it re-explained, and some students who speak another language and need to see and hear the directions again. This could also be used for students who ask a really down the road question. So for your students who are gifted, not just labeled as gifted, but who are high achieving students, they might ask a question that's down the road thinking that you're probably not going to get to. So as the teacher moves on with stuff they already understand, you can pull them aside and give them a next step. And challenge them. And so alternative teaching, and if you do all of those things, just depending on the week and depending on the day, then that table doesn't have a stigma attached. That table is like, okay, that's just where we go when we're going to do something a little bit different. And I think that's super important to remember. So here, these are my emojis. I don't really like that one because it's if the teacher is a trained teacher with a special ed degree. If it's paraprofessional, sometimes this is all you can do. But if you can move it into this realm, one teaching, one observing and gathering data, then you're helping that teacher have more of an active role, and then you're getting to see what students are doing better. So I would encourage you to move from this to this. This is parallel teaching because you're doing the same thing, just on different sides of the room. Station teaching, you rotate. Team teaching and interactive teaching is like you ping pong and switch roles. And then alternative teaching, you only go to the gas station when you need gas. You don't go all the time. So this is like an as needed station. All right. So again, this template is there if you would like to use it, but you don't have to. Which of these models would be best for the exceptional learners that you have encountered? Which models for ELL? Taking those things into consideration, which of these models would you prefer to use in your future classroom? Post your top 3 on the Padlet and explain why you chose them. So it's just the interactions Padlet. And I'm going to go through some due dates. So if you want to pause right now while this is fresh in your mind and do your interactions, you can do so. All right. So what's next? Posting on Padlet is your first order of business. Your master list of accommodations will be due and obviously your teaching tool is due today. What's due next? Your master list of accommodations. That's going to be due a week from Thursday. And what you can be working on is finalizing items 8 and 9 in your classroom management plan, or any items that are not finalized, revising your interest tasks so you can link it, and begin drafting item 11 of your classroom management plan, which is, here's your master list of accommodations. And then, with those things added. Here are your instructions for that. I'll let you study that, and then ask me some questions about it on Thursday if you would like. Your management plan, next steps. You're going to look at that list of accommodations. You're going to talk about that. You can talk about UDL if you want to. Like, there are a lot of things that we can put in place that will support teachers. I would say you could put your models of co-teaching as accommodations. I would accept the models of co-teaching in your accommodations list, because that would give you a way to pull one of those and talk about it when you talk about your 5 examples of how you're going to use specific accommodations to support special students with these needs. The discussion should focus on the other parts of your plan. And so that's why, for learning environment, or for curriculum instruction, or for rules and routines, you could use a co-teaching model really in any of those places if you want to. So again, I'm encouraging you to use your co-teaching models in your accommodations plan, and then you can pull it in and use one or two of them when you're discussing this, along with all of the other accommodations that you'll have in your master list. If you want to see an example of what this looks like in action, go to this website. I'm going to pull it up here. She's got her link to her accommodations plan. Her one, the affective learning environment, she's going to have a calm corner. The physical learning environment, she's going to have a daily schedule. For her classroom rules and discipline, she's going to do some contracts. For grading and homework, she's going to use recording devices. For curriculum instruction, she's going to use graphic organizers. Now, you do not have to do, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things discussed here. You could do 2 or 3 for curriculum and instruction. You don't have to have one for every area of your management plan. So you might have one for the affective learning environment. You might have one for the physical environment. You might not discuss that one or that one and have 3 for this. No more than 3 for any one area. But I'm just trying to give you some freedom there so you don't feel like you have to talk about all of the other areas of your learning, of your classroom management plan. You can do some focusing if you want to. All right. So in a nutshell, your teaching tool is due by noon on Thursday. Your interactions on co-teaching should be posted shortly thereafter. Next, and then we will meet after everybody has done their presentation so that you can ask questions of one another. On Thursday, you're going to have your group accommodations plans submitted before class. So before we get together at 1:30, and we are getting together at 1:30 on this day, which my cursor is not working and you can't see me pointing to it. So 1:30 this day, 1:30 this day, be working on your last part of the project, because I might not even have, we might just meet and see what questions you have. And then your final project is due at 10 a.m. on May 5th. That's what's been posted. But if you want to turn it in early, I won't mind. All right. Hopefully you got this in time to incorporate it into your into thinking about it in terms of your posting on Padlet. And if not, you can be thinking about it in terms of your accommodations plan. I will see you guys at 1:30 on Thursday, and I cannot wait to see your teaching tools. Once you have submitted them, I will post them. So they'll just be in a module where everybody can get to them and see them. All right. Thanks, you guys. Let me know if you have questions.